Jai Sri Krishna. Let's start discussion on very important two methodologies of the project management. One is Agile and another one is a Waterfall. So these are the software development life cycles where we are working in the IT projects, how we will work, requirement analysis, design, development, coding, testing in each phase. And most of the interviewer, while you are giving the interview for the business analyst role or the project management role, or the scrum master role or the product owner role or other functional role related to the IT project. So there will be interviewer might high chance to ask you what is the agile methodology, what is the waterfall methodology, what are the pros and cons of these methodologies, where we use the agile and waterfall methodology, on what kind of project we use the waterfall methodology and the agile methodology, or if you have, they will give you some, the kind of project or the requirement, and ask you for that which methodology you will use for such kind of project. So let's start discussion on this video, and you after end of this video you will get answer all these questions. So let's start, guys. And if you are interested in the role of business analyst, quality analyst, quant analyst, or related to the AI ML technique in a functional and technical way, so please like and subscribe my channel. So I am creating study material on such videos, and I'll help you if you have any open points, or if you looking for future role as a quality analyst or the business analyst, or the business analyst in the financial crime or the mutual fund domain, or in the AIML domain, or in the quantum finance or the quantum computing domain. So please like my video and do comments. I'll therefore help you on this part. So let's first discussion what's the big deal, and what are the project management methodologies, and why we are using, and why the project management methodologies are very important. So let's discuss on that point in detail. So they are a structure framework that guide team through various phases of the project, like requirement gathering, requirement analysis, design, development, coding, testing, implementation, and the feedback. So these are the phases. In waterfall and agile, these phases are working differently and their structure are very different. So that's why we differentiate these two methodologies, and they provide these methodologies will provide a roadmap, best practices, and the processes to ensure the project are delivered on time and within a budget which we have. So we just create a product chart, project charter, or the work breakdown structure before we start working, and we selected the methodology which we are going to use. And then the 2 days we will compare the two most popular methodologies which are the market use and most of the organization are adopting, like waterfall and agile. So agile is the best and modern technique, and it is an iterative approach, and most of the organization will adopt the agile methodology. So there is a business analyst, scrum master, product owner, or the development team work on the agile, and it used for the minimum viable product, and continuously within 2 weeks or after end of one sprint you should have the deliverable software in the agile methodology. As compared to the waterfall is a sequential method, or it is an the traditional approach, or it is an the old approach where each stage, like requirement gathering, design, development, coding, testing, deployment, feedback, we do entire product for one time and then we will move for the next phase. So that is the difference between agile and the waterfall. It has a strength and weakness. So if you have the clear requirement and the you don't continuously change the requirement, so then you will use the waterfall. And if your requirement are not clear and you just start with the small idea, so then you go for the agile. So each methodology has their pros, cons, or the strength, weaknesses, and knowing each right for, we don't say that one of the methodology is the right for all projects. So each methodology is separate, depend on the nature of the project or the structure of the project. So let's first start discussion on the waterfall model. It is an the classical approach and it is an the old approach. So let's discuss what is the waterfall methodology, how the PA or the quality analyst will interact, how the pages will comes into the waterfall methodology. So like waterfall process flows steadily downward through the distinct sequential phases, and you complete one phase entirely before moving to the next phase. So in waterfall methodology, you need to complete one phase like requirement gathering, then requirement designing, then implementation, testing, verification, maintenance, and then we will move in the next phase before one complete and take a sign off on the one phase. So going back, and it is a difficult to cost if you are into the testing phase, so it's difficult go to the the requirement gathering or the design or the phase and to gain the requirement. So it's very difficult and it is in the costly. Whenever you have the clear cut requirement, at that time we go for the waterfall methodology. And there is a requirement, so where a business analyst or the subject matter expert or the project management involvement is used, like requirement gathering, document all project requirement upfront, and the scope is fixed to draw the to draw the business requirement document, functional requirement document, user use case document, or to draw the process flow, to collect the workshop, meeting, group discussion, chat session, brainstorming sessions, to collect the requirement in the requirement gathering session. In design, so they create a wireframes, prototypes, business require BRD document, and create the detailed blueprint based on the requirement, how the process or the sequence will look like. There will draw the sequence diagram or the flow chart. So that will done in the design phase, and then they will move the implementation, or the coding or the development phase is there. So build the project base to design and to start working on the design, and they do the developer will do the develop as per the requirement product, or the and once that is completed, then verification and the testing, the test complete product against the initial requirement. And AVT testing or SIT testing will done, and to do the end-to-end testing, if that's okay, then they will move for the maintenance and provide the ongoing support and fix after the lunch if there is any feedbacks or the product enhancement. Then maintenance team will continuously work on that thing. So that's the one step is completed, then we will move to the next step, then second step is completed, then third step. So that's the waterfall methodology. And where we have at the initial stage when we are start working on the project, so we have the 360-degree view of that the requirements. So let's move on the next, that is a key characteristics of waterfall model. So it is and the linear and the sequential. Each phase is independent at the last, dependent on the last, and it will complete it one and then move on the next slide. And heavy documentation, detailed plan and document are created at the beginning. We need to document each and everything process flow, and it require the heavy documentation, sign up on that documentation. And the limited customer involvement, yeah, once you start working on the project, so you don't continuously you don't gather the once the requirement gathering phase is completed, so you don't go and collect the requirement, you just do design, development, testing, coding. So there is limited customer, there is not huge involvement of customer. The client typically involved at the start and the end, to requirement gathering and to the testing and verification phase. So let's move on the next slide, that is the pros and cons of the waterfall methodology, where it's suit, where it's not say it's suit, or what are the advantage and disadvantage of the waterfall. So the the advantage of the waterfall methodology is it is under clear and the structure, provide a predictable easy flow of roadmap, and we can to draw when we are able to deliver the project. So it's a clear structure, what are the step by step process, and we can fix the milestone to complete certain tasks in the waterfall methodology. So that's the advantage of that. And then the predictable cost timeline, so easier to estimate the total cost and time upfront, and how much the cost required, how much the budget is required, how much the resource will require to complete that project with the documentation. So that's the advantage. And the strong documentation, great for the project with strict compliance and regulatory requirement. So if there is a regulatory requirement or the fixed requirement or compliance related requirement, so these are the methodologies very suitable and very helpful to work on the waterfall methodology. An idea for the simple projects, obviously if you have not a complex project and it is a simple project, easy to understand project, or if you have the fixed requirement, then we will work on when the requirement define and likely changes, so then we will use the waterfall methodology. And then the The disadvantage of this is a lack of flexibility, delay in feedback, and risk misinterpretation. So there is lack of flexibility. We are Once you completed the one phase, so you can't move in that phase again and again, and you just move next phase, complete that, and move next phase. So you are at the one time you need to work on the one phase. So that's the you don't have flexibility or the flexible to move in any other phase, like requirement gathering, requirement analysis, design, development, coding, testing, deployment, maintenance, testing, or implementation. So change are difficult to expensive to implement once the phase is completed, correct. And delay in feedback, once you deploy the your patch, or the output, or the product or software in the production environment, and then the user will use, and if they identify some bugs and anything, then they will give us the feedback, and then we start. So feedback is the end of implementation time we get the feedbacks, and you don't working the product until a very end, which is lead the late stage discovery and even uses and unmeet the expectation. So there is might be chance, if you are building the project on waterfall methodology, once you completed the project, or one of the other competitor will launch before the same project. So that's the the threat to use the waterfall methodology. And the misinterpretation, if initial requirement are misunderstand, the entire project can float. It's important, and there is need the strong BA who can understand the requirement and document very well. If the requirement are not understand, then we will not able to done the product. So let's move on the next slide. That is the agile model and the modern tech. So what is an agile methodology? So let's discuss in agile, and the most important, and most of the organizations, or if you are want to go in the multinational organization, they are work on the agile methodology or the agile model. So you need to understand the agile model is very well. So agile is an iterative and incremental way to develop the software, or to develop the product, or we use the minimum viable product concept, MVP we stand for. So the project are break down into small and manageable cycles called a sprint. So there is 2 weeks or 4 week sprint, where the product backlog item we converted into the sprint backlog item, and that item we will work in that sprint. And we up the end of this sprint, so we will to have some uh, features or the function which we deploy in the production environment, and all these things done. So each sprint deliver the working piece of the product or the software that we deploy in the production environment. So that's the advantage we can use to take the functionality within 2 weeks. It's an where we can use the prioritization and deprioritization methodologies of the product backlog item and the sprint backlog item. So let's discuss on the core principles of agile model. So it is an individual and iterative over the process, or the tools we use a Jira. It will give you the working for all the phases of the small requirements, the small piece of the requirement, like requirement analysis, design, development, coding, testing, and deployment. So that is the important. And working software over a comprehensive documentation you use, and with the working software, and you can deploy that software within 2 weeks or the 4 weeks to the production environment. And the customer collaboration, it's then the most important, the benefits from agile methodology. So there is a continuously customer, or the project sponsor environment for that project, for requirement gathering, and they will give you suggestion accordingly you will. So that's the important. And responding to change over the following plan, yeah, where you can immediately make a changes. It's a very simple as compared to the waterfall methodology. You may involve the changes related to the products, and key characteristics of this iterative and flexible, yeah, welcome and adopt the changes throughout the project life cycle. Anytime you are ready to take a changes, there is very more than happy to take a changes in that process. And lightweight documentation. So in the agile methodology, you don't need to prepare the huge document. You just work on the some document to create, and to work on the testing, and to process flow. That's the the lightweight documentation. And continuous customer involvement. client provide a feedback for after a sprint, or the client involvement is there, you and accordingly you can satisfy the customer problem. So that's the important. So let's discuss the advantage and disadvantage of agile methodology, so you can understand where it fits and where it's not fit. So high flexibility is and most important, so easily adapt by changing requirement and the new information we can take anytime. We are just need to prioritize and deprioritize the requirement and accordingly start working on that, and within the 2 to 3 weeks we are able to give that, if that is a small requirement, then we will, the user can feel or user can use that requirement. And the faster of delivery value, obviously the working product are delivered frequently, allowing for early feedbacks and continuously changing update the product as per the product owner requirement or the product requirement, and continuously deliver values to the end user and improve the quality issue and identify fix early in the process, identify the bugs, fix bugs in early process where it adopted. So continue improve the quality of the product, user get the better experience and the customer satisfaction. Obviously the continuous collaboration ensure the final product meets the customer involvement, and there is a minimum chance to product or the project gets fail while we using the agile methodology. And the the disadvantage is the less predictable. Yeah, final cost and timeline can be harder to determine and at the outside. Yeah, obviously we don't have, we work on the minimum viable product concept and we don't have the clear cut requirement. So then that case we don't predict when that product is get completed, how much cost required to complete these projects. So it's, and the the challenging things to understand these things, and they require the active involvement, demand the significant commitment from the customer or the team, or we are not going to require the active involvement for that. And that they might be get lazy to give you requirements. So these are one of the disadvantage. And the risks of scope creep, obviously. So continuously client involvement, and they continuously give you the change request. No, no, I want to that way, I want to that way. And once your development is product, and in that case you are not able to deploy that product or feature within a time or within a budget. So the scope creep situation will happen without the proper management, and continue changes and expand the project scope uncontrolled, and there is no unnecessary changes will client give you. So scope creep will happen. And the minimum documentation can be challenging for project requiring detailed paper trail, and documents are not if there, so we are not able to identify where is the mistake. So these are the the disadvantage of the agile methodology. So let's move and the key difference here, the what is the difference between the agile versus the waterfall methodology. So we discuss on that. So let's the project flow. So agile methodology project flow is a linear or the sequential or the step by step, but in the sorry, the waterfall is linear and the sequential, and agile is iterative or the cyclic, or where we can continuously get the product outputs from completing each sprint. And the flexibility rigid, so in waterfall is a rigid and difficult to change, make the changes in the process. But as compared to agile is a very flexible, and it is a easy to adopt the changes or upgrade the product. Or the customer involvement in waterfall is limited, the customer is only involved in the start and end of the the project phases. But in agile there is continuous, anytime welcome the the customer, or he can give the feedbacks, or it is in the continuous involvement. Documentation it require, in a waterfall we require the extensive and detailed documentation on all documentation. But in as compared to agile, there is a minimum and the just in time document, we don't require the document, and whenever required then we complete create and save it. But it's not the detailed documentation we require. We require the documentation at the requirement level. And the risks identify late in the process, and it's a huge risk there. But risk is identify mitigate early, we can avoid the risks, we take immediate action on the risks. And best for suitable and well defined requirement, stable requirement, fixed requirement, waterfall methodology is the best. But if you involve an unclear requirement and you start from the zero, so you should go for the agile methodology. So you can give the difference between the agile methodology and the waterfall methodology to interviewer, so he can get impress on your explanation. So let's discuss on the choosing the right methodology on the basis of your the project. Yeah, I told you the interviewer might ask you which methodology is the best and why that. So there is the answer of this question. So when to use the waterfall and when to use the agile. If suppose your project is a clear fixed requirement and the stable scope and that not going to change, so you can go use for the waterfall methodology because you have the budget, you have the timeline, and you can fix your requirement and you can deliver if using to immediate the software. An industry with strict regulation and the compliance need medical devices and the constructions where the waterfall is most suitable methodology when a predictable budget and timeline are on the top priority. Correct. If you have the fixed budget or the fixed predictable timelines for the project, so you can go for the waterfall methodology. And when to use the agile methodology, so the project with involving requirement or high degree of uncertainty, we don't know where the project will goes, and on the basis of customer feedback, on the basis of market feedback, we are going to make changes in the project. So in such cases we will go for the use the agile methodology. And in fast paced industry like software development, or there is not retail industry, there is no fixed requirement and the customer involvement on the basis of, so where it's the best to use the agile methodology. And when the customer feedback are rapidly deliver the crucial, and we take high advantage, or we take customer feedback to deploy the product, so in that we will use the agile methodology. And for a team that self organized and highly collaborative, obviously if that team will work on the self and highly collaborative, so you should go for the agile methodology. So let's move on the last slide, that is the conclusion and the hybrid word, how it would look like, and the conclusion of this. So neither the methodology is better than other, there are the simply suited for the different types of projects, and each methodology is not, there is a different type, what type of the project you are working, on that basis you can select the methodologies. So I already mentioned on the slide, that is choosing the right methodology, you can read again, and I accordingly what type of the project you have, so you can take this the methodology. And the menu organization today's hybrid approach, and building the elements of the both methodologies on the basis of their requirement, on the basis of their needs, so they will use both the methodologies, and to work on that the projects, and they want to build the project as per the customer requirement. And the ultimate goal is choose the framework that fits your project unique needs and dynamic team dynamics, and organize the culture to ensure the project is success and deliver the timeline within the budget. So that's the important. So guys, if you like my video and if you understand what is the the which are the project management methodology is important like agile and waterfall, so please like and subscribe my channel, so that's motivate me to create and more such videos for you. Once again, thank you so much guys.